I never imagined my own father would humiliate me in front of our entire family. On my sister Clara's wedding day, while everyone else enjoyed the luxury of the grand hall, he insisted I sit with the staff, carrying trays and clearing dishes as relatives whispered and stared. The sting of embarrassment burned hotter than I expected, but I forced myself to stay composed. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Ava Lawson. I'm 26, quietly ambitious, and always put family first. But seeing my father, Robert, control every detail of this day, down to who sat where, made me realize how little he truly valued my presence. Clara, radiant in her designer dress, soaked up all the attention effortlessly, oblivious to the silent humiliation unfolding beside her. As I balanced a tray of champagne, I tried to keep my head high, recalling the years I had sacrificed my own wants to support this family. The whispers of distant relatives pricked at my confidence, yet a flicker of determination sparked within me. I would not let this moment define me. Every glance from my father felt like a reminder of my place, yet even in that crowded service area, I noticed subtle details others missed, the misaligned centerpieces, the server struggling with the heavy trays. I began quietly assessing, observing, noting the gaps in planning no one else seemed to care about. That day, something shifted. Beneath the embarrassment, a plan began to form, one that would turn humiliation into an unexpected chance for recognition, without anyone realizing it, not even my father. I never imagined my own father would humiliate me in front of our entire family. On my sister Clara's wedding day, while everyone else enjoyed the luxury of the grand hall, he insisted I sit with the staff, carrying trays and clearing dishes as relatives whispered and stared. The sting of embarrassment burned hotter than I expected, but I forced myself to stay composed. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Ava Lawson. I'm 26, quietly ambitious, and always put family first. But seeing my father, Robert, control every detail of this day, down to who sat where, made me realize how little he truly valued my presence. Clara, radiant in her designer dress, soaked up all the attention effortlessly, oblivious to the silent humiliation unfolding beside her. As I balanced a tray of champagne, I tried to keep my head high, recalling the years I had sacrificed my own wants to support this family. The whispers of distant relatives pricked at my confidence, yet a flicker of determination sparked within me. I would not let this moment define me. Every glance from my father felt like a reminder of my place, yet even in that crowded service area, I noticed subtle details others missed, the misaligned centerpieces, the server struggling with the heavy trays. I began quietly assessing, observing, noting the gaps in planning no one else seemed to care about. That day, something shifted. Beneath the embarrassment, a plan began to form, one that would turn humiliation into an unexpected chance for recognition, without anyone realizing it, not even my father. As I adjusted the tray in my hands, a flood of memories hit me. Growing up, I had always tried to make my father proud, staying late to help with chores, tutoring Clara when she struggled, and quietly excelling in school and work without expecting praise. Yet, time and again, my efforts seemed invisible, overshadowed by Clara's charm and Robert's favoritism. I remembered the nights I stayed up baking cookies for his office parties, only to hear him brag about Clara's natural talent the next morning. I thought about the weekends I spent helping plan events he later praised her for, and the countless times I swallowed my disappointment when he overlooked my achievements. The weight of being unseen had built slowly, layer by layer, until today's humiliation felt like the last straw. Every polite nod from guests, every glance from a cousin or aunt, felt like it magnified the unfairness. My chest tightened with a mixture of anger and sorrow, a pain that had lingered since childhood but had never found a voice. I realized how much of my life had been spent bending to their expectations, only to be treated as secondary. But beneath the ache, a spark ignited. This moment, though painful, could not break me. I would not allow this public embarrassment to define my worth or my future. A quiet, determined voice rose inside me, steady and unwavering. I won't let this humiliation go unanswered. I straightened my back, held my head high, and let the resolve settle in my bones. The day had become more than just a wedding, it was the starting line for something far greater. And I was ready to run. The staff area was chaotic, a cramped corner of the grand hall where trays bumped elbows and servers weaved between tables. I tried to navigate carefully, but the narrow space made every step feel precarious. Guests occasionally peeked over, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and subtle judgment, and I felt the heat of embarrassment rise. I caught snippets of conversations, relatives whispering about why I wasn't seated with the family, their tones sharp and dismissive. One aunt muttered, "Does she even belong here?" while a cousin smirked, clearly enjoying the awkwardness. Each comment was like a needle, piercing through the fragile calm I tried to maintain. Accidents seemed to happen in slow motion. A waiter brushed past, tipping a glass of white wine onto a linen napkin that barely contained the spill. I scrambled to steady the tray, nearly dropping the plates of hors d'oeuvres, my hands trembling with the pressure. Every minor mishap felt magnified, drawing attention to my corner of the room and highlighting how out of place I had been made to feel. All the while, my father remained oblivious, his attention fully on Clara, offering her handshakes and smiles while ignoring the discomfort I endured. His lack of acknowledgement stung deeper than any comment or spilled drink, a silent confirmation that my presence didn't matter in his eyes. Despite the chaos and shame, I forced myself to focus on each task, careful and deliberate. I could feel the quiet anger simmering beneath my composure, a resolve forming stronger with every whispered remark and every clumsy movement around me. This was more than an embarrassing afternoon, it was a proving ground, and I silently vowed that the world would soon recognize the strength and patience I had carried through a lifetime of being overlooked. Amid the constant rush of trays and plates, I noticed a tall man standing near the edge of the staff area, observing quietly. His presence was different from the other guests, calm, composed, with an air of authority that made people take notice without a word. I later learned his name was Marcus Reed, the owner of the restaurant and a man respected in the city for his sharp mind and fair reputation. Our eyes met briefly, and there was a flicker of understanding in his gaze. He seemed to recognize the unfairness of my situation without needing any explanation. For a moment, the weight of embarrassment eased, replaced by the unexpected comfort of being seen. He approached cautiously, his voice warm and genuine. "Are you okay?" "That looks challenging," he said, nodding toward the crowded staff space and the constant stream of trays I was managing. His concern wasn't pity, it carried a curiosity that felt rare, like someone was truly paying attention to the person behind the tasks. I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal, then simply nodded. "I'm managing," I replied, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were still shaking slightly from the earlier mishaps. As he stepped back, giving me a small, encouraging smile, a thought sparked in my mind. Perhaps this stranger, someone entirely separate from the family chaos, could see me differently. Could he be the person who recognized my worth, the one who might offer me a chance to reclaim the dignity that had been stripped away in front of everyone else? For the first time that afternoon, I felt a sliver of hope. Amid the embarrassment and whispers, a new possibility had appeared, an unexpected ally in the form of a stranger, whose interest could turn my humiliation into something meaningful. As the wedding unfolded around me, I began analyzing every detail, not just to survive the afternoon, but to understand how I could turn it to my advantage. Years of quietly observing and managing events had honed a skill set my family never recognized, organizing chaos, anticipating problems, and solving them before anyone noticed. Today, surrounded by spills, overcrowded staff spaces, and stressed servers, those skills suddenly felt like weapons. I mentally traced the flow of the room, the placement of tables, the timing of the courses, the way staff moved between guests. Small inefficiencies jumped out at me immediately, trays that collided, drinks that tipped too easily, and guests left waiting longer than necessary. Most people would see these as minor hiccups, I saw opportunities. I remembered the countless times I had planned school fundraisers, birthday parties, and family events, ensuring every detail was seamless while receiving little acknowledgement. That patience and precision had never earned me praise, but now I realized they gave me leverage. If I could subtly guide the day from behind the scenes, I could demonstrate my competence in a way no one would be able to ignore. A plan started to form, quiet and careful. I would step in when needed, offering solutions without appearing to seek attention. Every adjustment, every correction, would highlight my capability while leaving the family, and especially my father, unaware that the shift in control was happening. For the first time that day, I felt a sense of empowerment. Humiliation had sparked a strategy, and I resolved to use the afternoon not just to survive, but to quietly assert my presence and prove that the daughter he overlooked was far more capable than anyone suspected. Just as I was balancing a tray of hors d'oeuvres, Marcus reappeared, moving through the hall with a measured pace. This time, he didn't linger in the shadows, he walked with quiet authority, scanning the room until his gaze landed on me. I was bent slightly over the buffet, filling my plate among the staff, trying not to draw attention. He approached my father, his tone calm but deliberate. I wasn't aware the family wasn't seated properly. "Did you arrange this?" he asked, his words carrying just enough curiosity to draw attention without raising his voice. Robert's face went pale. He stammered, caught off guard by the unexpected challenge. Well, that's." His hesitation drew the eyes of several relatives, and murmurs spread quietly through the hall. For the first time, his control over the scene wavered. I straightened, keeping my composure as my heart beat rapidly. There was a strange satisfaction in seeing the man who had orchestrated my embarrassment falter, even slightly. I maintained a calm exterior, aware of the eyes now observing the interaction. A subtle, private smile tugged at my lips. I had been underestimated once again, but this time the balance was beginning to shift. The room seemed to pause for a brief moment, attention divided between my father's awkward attempts to explain and Marcus' measured presence. I remained still, silent, letting the scene unfold naturally, knowing that my dignity was quietly being restored by circumstances beyond my father's control. In that instant, a sense of quiet triumph settled over me. I had endured humiliation with patience, and now, without saying a word, the first cracks in my father's facade were showing. The day's events were beginning to turn in my favor, and I could feel the momentum shifting. After the brief confrontation, Marcus lingered near the staff area, his eyes catching mine with an encouraging look. Summoning courage, I approached him, careful to keep my voice low. "I noticed a few things that might improve the flow of service," I said, pointing out small issues, overlapping tasks, misplaced utensils, and timing gaps between courses. He listened intently, nodding as I explained each observation. Unlike my father, he didn't dismiss my words or assume I was overstepping. There was genuine interest in his gaze, a respect that I had rarely encountered from adults in my life, especially from Robert. I felt a quiet thrill, realizing that someone outside my family recognized my attention to detail and problem-solving ability. Marcus asked a few questions, and I offered solutions, simple adjustments that could make the evening run smoother. Each suggestion was met with a thoughtful pause, then agreement. It was the first time that day I felt the weight of my competence acknowledged, and it was intoxicating. As the evening progressed, he sought my opinion on minor decisions, subtly deferring to my judgment without making it obvious to anyone else. I could sense a trust forming, the kind that could grow into something significant if handled carefully. A seed of anticipation settled inside me. While my father ignored my presence and Clara basked in attention, I was quietly carving a place for myself that could bring far more respect, and perhaps opportunity, than any approval from my family. For the first time, I realized that endurance and observation were more powerful than submission. The humiliation my father imposed was beginning to transform into a chance for recognition and advancement, a subtle revenge that required only patience, intelligence, and timing. While circulating between the staff and the dining area, I couldn't help but catch fragments of conversation. Relatives whispered, some smirking, commenting on how Clara had been treated like royalty while I was practically invisible. One cousin joked, "Looks like Robert's favorites get the best seats," and a few heads nodded in agreement. The words stung, but they also highlighted what I had already suspected: my father's bias was obvious to everyone but him. Instead of retreating, I chose to respond carefully. When an aunt leaned over with a pointed question about the seating arrangements, I spoke with calm precision. Actually, I noticed a few areas where adjustments could help the service run smoother, I said, referencing timing and table flow in a way that didn't attack anyone but displayed awareness. The aunt blinked, clearly taken aback, and the conversation shifted slightly. Even a skeptical uncle, who had been quietly judging my position in the family hierarchy, raised an eyebrow. Small murmurs followed as I offered simple suggestions, showing insight without overstepping. The juxtaposition between my composed observations and my father's obliviousness was becoming more apparent to everyone around us. I could sense the subtle change in energy. Relatives who had laughed at my predicament now exchanged glances, questioning why Robert had ignored my input for so long. A few whispered comments hinted at doubt regarding his decisions, small cracks forming in the authority he had long relied on to maintain control. It was a delicate balance, but I had planted seeds that could grow without me needing to speak loudly or challenge him directly. The whispers and sideways glances were enough to expose the hypocrisy my father had tried to hide, and I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing the first layer of respect was beginning to shift in my favor. Later in the evening, Marcus approached me with a proposal that left my heart pounding. "Ava, your observations today have been impressive," he said, his voice calm but confident. "I could use someone with your eye for detail in my business. Would you consider joining my team?" I paused, carefully weighing my words. Accepting this offer could change everything, but I had to ensure it remained my achievement, not another opportunity for my father to claim credit. "I'd be interested," I replied thoughtfully, "but I want to make sure the role is recognized as my own contribution. I prefer handling things independently." Marcus nodded, a knowing smile crossing his face. He understood without needing further explanation, and that unspoken trust gave me a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in years. For the first time, my skills and intelligence were being acknowledged on their own merit, without anyone overshadowing me. Meanwhile, the family remained completely unaware of the shift in my circumstances. Clara continued laughing with relatives, still absorbed in the spotlight, while Robert mingled, oblivious to the subtle recognition I was receiving from someone entirely outside our circle. The contrast between their ignorance and my growing influence filled me with a quiet satisfaction. As I discussed the details with Marcus, I felt a sense of agency I had never experienced. Every suggestion I made, every idea I presented, was taken seriously, shaping the direction of a real business opportunity. It was a stark reminder that respect and validation often come from those who truly see your capabilities, not from those blinded by favoritism. By the end of our conversation, I had carved out a path for myself that no family bias could block. The seeds of quiet revenge were taking root, and I could feel my confidence blooming with every careful step. By the time the main course was being served, I could sense a subtle change in the room. Robert's confident demeanor wavered as he noticed the glances and quiet nods my relatives exchanged whenever I offered a suggestion or insight. Even more striking, Marcus' attention and respect were clearly directed toward me, his approval visible and unmistakable. The whispers I had noticed earlier seemed to carry more weight now. Relatives who had once dismissed my presence now leaned in slightly, asking questions and acknowledging my ideas. My father's pale smile faltered, and a tension crept into his posture that had not been there before. It was a slow dawning of awareness. Robert began to realize that the favoritism he had displayed so openly was no longer a shield, it had exposed his misjudgment. Clara continued enjoying herself, oblivious, but the contrast between her unearned praise and the recognition I was quietly receiving only emphasized his oversight. I felt the shift but did not comment, did not gloat. Every moment of his discomfort was earned silently, a mirror of the neglect and bias he had shown me for years. There was no need for words, the subtlety of his regret was far more powerful than any confrontation I could have staged. I held my composure, carrying out my duties while internally noting each sign of his realization. Each glance, each hesitation in his responses, confirmed that he understood, finally, that his favoritism had consequences. The balance of respect and attention had quietly shifted, and I was the one standing firm, unshaken, while he faced the results of his own choices. In that room, among whispered observations and unnoticed accomplishments, I let him feel the weight of his own mistakes, and I remained silent, dignified, and victorious. A few weeks after the wedding, Marcus invited the family to a private gathering, officially recognizing the team that had helped make the event a success. I arrived with a quiet confidence, my nerves steadied by the knowledge that this time, I would not be ignored. As Marcus addressed the group, he singled me out. "Ava's insight and quick thinking kept everything running smoothly," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Her contributions were invaluable, and I want everyone to know how much we owe to her efforts." The room fell silent for a heartbeat, then polite applause began to ripple outward. I could see the subtle surprise on the faces of relatives who had previously whispered doubts about me. Even Clara's smile faltered slightly as she realized the focus had shifted. For the first time, my accomplishments were being acknowledged publicly, without exaggeration, without comparison, and without my father attempting to claim credit. Robert's expression was unreadable at first, then slowly softened into something like recognition. I didn't need him to say anything. His silence spoke volumes. He understood that the hierarchy he had maintained through favoritism no longer applied. The validation I had sought my whole life had arrived, not from his approval, but from merit and perseverance. The applause continued, but I remained composed, letting the moment settle. A sense of peace washed over me as the subtle weight of past humiliations lifted. I finally felt seen, respected, and valued, not as someone secondary, not as a quiet observer, but as an equal contributor whose skill and patience could not be ignored. In that room, among family and friends, I allowed myself a private smile. The long-standing bias had been neutralized, and for the first time, I could simply breathe, proud of the recognition I had quietly earned. After the gathering, I stepped away from the crowd, letting the warmth of recognition settle over me. Robert remained in the room, surrounded by relatives and the echoes of applause, yet I could sense the quiet weight of his reflection. He had seen the consequences of his favoritism, and now he had the space to consider the choices that had brought him to this moment. I didn't need to speak or remind him, his awareness was enough. My focus shifted to what truly mattered. Marcus had proven himself trustworthy, and the opportunity he offered had become more than just a job, it was a partnership built on mutual respect. We worked closely together, our collaboration seamless, and I discovered a sense of fulfillment that no familial validation could match. Every project I tackled, every decision I influenced, reinforced the dignity I had earned through patience, skill, and persistence. I realized that the victories I sought all along were never about proving my father wrong in front of everyone else. They were about reclaiming my sense of self-worth, establishing boundaries, and being recognized for my own capabilities. The humiliation of that wedding day had become a catalyst, guiding me toward the life and respect I deserved. As I reflected quietly in the calm after the storm, I smiled, understanding the true power of subtle triumph. The satisfaction of seeing my father confront his mistakes, while I continued forward on my own terms, was profound. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud, it's living better than those who tried to break you. In the end, I had achieved exactly that: respect, dignity, and the quiet knowledge that I had risen above the limitations imposed by those who underestimated me.